In the video today, we're answering a viewer question because America asks us, who invented pole vaulting? Although it's difficult to find written accounts, it appears that people have been propelling themselves through the air with poles since ancient times. In fact, depictions of people leaping with poles can be found as far back as 400 BC. A practical and inexpensive way to traverse swampy, marshy areas, propelling over wet places on poles has traditionally been a common practice in the fens of Cambridgeshire, Lincolnshire, Norfolk, and Huntingdonshire in the UK, as well as the marshes of the Netherlands. As the bogs and estuaries were drained and developed, it became custom for residents to keep jumping poles for a while walking around outside. Not restricted to the countryside, vaulting water with poles has also been a popular technique employed by Venice's gondoliers when moving from their watercraft to the shore. Over the years, pole vaulting changed from being a pragmatic mode of transportation to a sport. In 1843, the idea of competing for height as opposed to distance was pioneered at an early contest at Ulverston Football and Cricket Club in Lancashire. By 1850, competitions in the sport were being held routinely in Germany, and by the mid-19th century, the techniques we see today were already in use in the United States. Although the poles were formerly made of aluminium or bamboo, by the 1950s, modern composites such as fiberglass were substituted, making for a stronger yet equally light pole that enabled vaulters to reach even greater heights. However, there was one very significant change to the sport that happened only relatively recently. In the early 1980s, five-time All-American from Indiana University, Dave Volz, perfected a technique of steadying the crossbar during a jump. Volz was burly for a pole vaulter at 185 pounds, and according to his friends, he would go down that runway so hard he's almost out of control. Having quick reactions while sailing through the air, if he happened to hit the crossbar, Volz would reach out with his left hand, grab the bar, and steady it on the standards while suspended in mid-air. Giving himself a distinct advantage, Volzing allowed Volz to try for even greater heights and set new records. Having good success early, he raised the American record in 1982 to 18 feet and 10.5 inches, but injuries that year to his left ankle had a lasting effect. Unable to make the Olympic team in 1984 and 1988, he broke his right leg in multiple places in 1987. Volz surprised everyone when he finally made the Olympic team in 1992, and he took 5th place. Not everyone was impressed with his gymnastics, however, and some of his competitors even claimed that vaulting ruined the sport, even though it required incredible skill that few could readily emulate. Indeed, arguably, this made the sport even more challenging. In the end, many apparently agreed with the opponents of vaulting, and today it has been banned by every main athletic association, including the International Association of Athletics Federations, the IAAF, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, and the National Federation of State School Associations, the NFHS, as well as finally the USA Track and Field, Inc., USATF, whose Rule 183, subsection 5, Part D provides it shall be a failure if during the vault the vaulter steadies or replaces the bar with his or her hands. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, we've got a merch store, and if you're watching this video the weekend beginning the 24th or Friday the 24th through to Tuesday, right now we've got a sale going on for Memorial Day. Didn't know what that was. I looked it up. Hope all my American friends have a great holiday weekend. You can get 15% off in our merch store this weekend. There's a link below. Go check it out. Let me know what you think of it. If you've got ideas, by the way, we're working on new merch stuff. I've asked this a few times. People have suggested some cool stuff on Twitter, which I am absolutely looking into. If you've got more suggestions from me, I'm at Simon Whistler. But for now, just go check out the merch store in the description below. Have a great holiday weekend, and I'll be back real soon.